strength. More than a rush of adrenaline, you will sustain me until the end. You are the only one. You are the only one. When you speak, dreams and reality collide. Your word rewrites my destiny. My life finds a new beginning. 'Cause you are my energy. Jesus, your presence is what ignites. Your truth is electric, the source of life. A moment with you makes me come alive, alive. When you speak, dreams and reality collide. Your word rewrites my destiny. My life finds a new beginning. 'Cause you are my energy. Jesus, you're everything I need and more. I'll follow you till the end. You are my strength. Jesus, you're everything I need and more. You are my energy. You're the everlasting God. You're the one who holds it all. I can't help but stand in awe. You are my energy. You're the everlasting God. You're the one who holds it all. I can't help but stand in awe. You are my energy. When you speak, dreams and reality collide. Your word rewrites my destiny. My life finds a new beginning. 'Cause you are my energy. Jesus, you're everything I need and more. I'll follow you till the end. You are my strength. Jesus, you're everything I need and more. You are my energy. You are my energy.
The Catholic comeback. We're talking about
I'm really excited.
we have a speaker from Australia, and we have
He's a doctor, right? He's like a doctor in spiritual leadership. He's not
we're live.
Hey!
To
Saturday Night Live! Hey! We are your hosts for today. My name is Dylan. This is Fred.
I'm Fred.
Some of you might be wondering why we're here. Before we start, a little bit fun fact about us. Me and Fred, we met over 10 years ago through the Jesus Youth movement. What else? Yeah, we started doing some fun stuff with JY. 8 years ago, we started doing audio visual ministry. So
ministry.
you might be thinking that we did some cool videos, some cool, clips, this and that. It was just a few little skits.
It was just good.
Copied from the skit guys, Catholic skit guys on
Shout out
YouTube.
skit guys, big up them, man.
That lasted a couple summers, and then we got canceled.
We did get canceled.
So JY canceled us, but we're very happy to be back here.
We're still so
hosting
grateful.
you for today.
So
now,
grateful.
sadly, again, we weren't good enough to get called for a whole season of SNL.
We'll
but
take what we can get.
They've called us here for tonight.
Yes.
So hopefully they don't cancel us in the middle of the show, but we're so happy to be here with you guys.
Yes. We made it through 1 minute, 29 more. We got this. Before we move on, we have some announcements. This is a live recording. So while you are watching us live, thank you for joining us. This is also recorded, and this will be posted in a week's time, Sunday. If you do want to catch last week's episode, that'll be posted tomorrow.
And speaking of that episode, we actually still need to watch that. And you might
we
be
haven't
wondering,
seen it.
don't worry, we had a good reason for missing last week's SNL. What happened last week?
Dylan's brother got married last
My
week.
brother got
That's
married
right. Big
last
up
week.
Kevin Michael and Kristen Michael.
Yeah.
Big them up. They're on their honeymoon now. Dylan, how do you feel?
Honestly, man, the wedding was fun. I mean, it was amazing. It was great to see them get married, but I'm not gonna lie, this past week I've been a little sad. I've been in a little withdrawal, you know, seeing them go off on their honeymoon, I'm missing them. Life's changed,
Yeah, you're gonna miss your brother. I knew this would happen. I knew he was gonna miss his brother when he was gone. But being a good neighbor that I am, being the good friend that I am, your boy came over. I've been here all week, staying with them, keeping them company. Just trying to close the gap that's been there now that Kevin's gone, and especially in Kevin's case, it's a pretty big gap. But it's been good. It's been fun. I've been here. I'm learning a lot of new things. I've never lived in a house with so many guys before, so that's been a new experience for me. I've been trying to learn new things and pick some new things up just to make them feel more like Kevin's still here. So I've been picking up the guitar. That's been great. I've also been eating 3 times more, which has been a bit hard, but overall it's been a really good time. And we move forward. We make movements. Speaking of movements, our next guest has been part of the JY movement for 2 decades, an active member of the movement for 2 decades.
Now, see, not just part of the movement, not just an active member, but he has served the movement through a lot of skills. Now, this guy, he's a pretty interesting, crazy guy.
He is.
His name's not just Dony Peter, but he's Dr. Dony Peter. He has a doctorate in transformational leadership. And what does he do now?
He does. Right now, he works for Toyota Australia. All right? Not Toyota, all right? That's right. I said it right. Toyota. All right? This ain't a random Donnie. We got Dr. Donnie on the line. Dr. Donnie, it's great to see you.
Can we have all a warm round of applause for Dr. Dony Peter?
Woo!
Hopefully you can see him now.
Hello, Donnie. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys too. Good to see you guys. Am I audible? You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you.
Another fun fact about Dony Peter, he's from Australia, so we're being joined from across the globe.
He actually had to reverse his camera so that we could see him right side up, actually. That's something that they have to do over there.
That was a fantastic joke.
And that's something I haven't heard before.
I'm sorry. I apologize for that joke. I take that joke back. I'm sorry.
Well, we have a lot to get into today. We have a pretty hefty topic, but before we get into the topic real quick, we want to meet you, Donnie, get the people to know you a little bit better. We know you have a family, you have a couple of kids and a beautiful wife. Tell us a bit about your family.
Yeah, so I have a wonderful, beautiful wife, Rupal, who's been very supportive all these years with the ministry, with me, and 2 wonderful kids. I have a daughter, Isabel, who's 8, and my son, Benjamin, who's just turned 3 last week. So there you go. So you have 2.
Happy birthday, Benjamin. And speaking of the ministry, how is that? It's interesting because we grew up in JY Canada.
Yep.
I've met you before. You come from a very different place in Australia. Tell us maybe a bit about the ministry in JY.
Yeah, it's pretty good here. We've got an active presence in almost all the states that we have. We have 6 states here, and we've got an active youth ministry. They are really coming up a lot of fun things that they're doing, a lot of creative endeavors. In fact, we also, I think last year we got a new band called the Fire Band. They've been performing around Australia, so pretty much stoked up. A very, very good, vibrant group here. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's great. Now, we want to get into this topic. It's pretty loaded. We wanted to start off. We've called this the Catholic comeback. Now, the world is changing. at an incredible rate, especially now that we're at the peak of the digital age. It's changing at an insane rate, and the Catholic Church does not play catch up. The Catholic Church, the one thing it doesn't do is play catch up, and Donnie's gonna show us why. So maybe we could start by just a little intro on it. What is it? What does the Catholic comeback really mean?
Yeah, see, it's kind of actually, it's not really a comeback if you actually talk about it. Because if you look at the Catholic Church never went away to come back, right? It came at a time in history when the world was clueless, right? If you look at the introduction of the Catholic Church, it came into a time of turmoil when people didn't have clarity, they didn't have a way forward, they didn't have a practical approach to living a peaceful, wonderful, loving life. That was the introduction of Catholicism. And I feel that's what the church has been contributing throughout the years that have passed by. And today, even more, there is a time for us to reintroduce those charisms of the church. And when I say a Catholic comeback, it means going back to the roots of what the church offered the first century world. And it isn't no different than the first century than in the century that we are living in today. An introduction to the gospel values, a practical way of seeing those gospel values in action, looking at society being transformed from within, not from external or top-down approach, but from a grassroots approach of people seeing and feeling and knowing the truth, and that truth setting them free. That is the Catholic comeback.
Yeah, that honestly sounds beautiful. The one thing that makes me think of when I hear first century Christians is I think of the apostles going out and proclaiming the gospel. But the one thing I can't help thinking about is if someone did that today, people would see them as crazy. People would see them as a lunatic, and they'd just be cast out. And so what does witnessing look like in the age like today, where we don't want to cast people out, we want to bring people in? And so maybe you want to give us a look into what that looks like in today's world.
Yeah, so again, like one of the misnomers that we have, or when we think about the first century Christians, we look at them, look at Paul preaching on a pulpit, or Peter and the group, having a hangout on the rooftops and shouting out, and everybody's just listening to them with rapt attention. Now, that's the end of a process, right? If you go back to what happened in the beginning, initially, the apostles were convinced about the gospel. They implanted the gospel in their lives, that they changed everything about it, right? They were able to transform their entire lives in service of the gospel. So there was belief, then there was transformation, and then there was the practical way. They lived that lifestyle. And after they lived that lifestyle, all they did was just talk about what they did. You see, the end product is a result of these three steps. And I feel today we are pressurized more than ever, especially among people who are challenged with their faith, and especially I think the Jesus audience here. You've known Christ, and now there's this whole rush to go and proclaim him. But you're missing out those two different steps in between, which is the transformation that occurs with it. So unless you're really transformed by the message, you will not be living that message. And if you're not living that message, what you're talking about becomes hypocritical. You're not talking about something that you know that you're doing. You're talking about somebody else's experience. And that sounds empty. So today, what we need to do more than ever is go through those two steps of being transformed by the gospel and then being able to practically live that in every day. And when you do that, it becomes like what St. Francis of Assisi used to say, right? Preach at all times, if necessary, use words. Yeah. So that's what he means by that, right? By that transformation and the living of that practical transformation, which will eventually result in a proclamation, right? Now, after that, when you talk, you're talking with a person of credibility. You're not talking about something, people will know, oh, here he goes. I know this man. I think there's no better example than Pope Francis. When he talks about humility, we know the man is the message. Right? And this is not just the Catholic viewpoint. You talk about everybody who knows this man knows, yeah, that guy, man, he says what he stands for, right? That is the Catholic comeback.
Right. That's interesting. And what I already like about what you're saying is there's a lot of practicals to it. And so maybe asking really specifically, practically, what is the true Catholic comeback? Let's say, for example, you're with a group of pro-choice people. What would your response be to them, and how would you react in a situation where, let's say, you had to defend the faith or defend, some of those social justice values of our faith?
Yeah, so the two things, right? So one is, I would say, one is a personal defense, and then there is a public defense, right? So when you talk about, for example, if there is a law that is coming into place that is against Catholic values, and you need to show up there, right? That's a public protest, right? Because you're protesting against an assault on values, an assault on your freedom, or what you believe is a quality of life. There, I believe we need to go up and stand and show our force and tell people, because many times because it's a democratic situation there, and their not being there means that that message will not be as impactful, right? However, there's a big difference when it comes to a personal, an individual response, right? So if you're a group of friends, like most of the times, you're not just going to go to a random pro-choice group and say, hey, you know what, guys, what are you doing? Let's party. No, it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be almost always within a group of friends, a network that you have. Now there, you need to pay attention that if you start off being anti what they are saying, remember, I'm saying it's not about them anti what they are saying. You might be perceived as being anti them, which is against them. Now, what you're doing is you're disconnecting there. And what I want to tell people there is to look at a longer game. Now imagine, so most of you guys who are listening would be in university right now, young adults, right? Run about in that 18 to 25, 30, age group. What I want you guys to think is fast forward and think around about 20 years ahead, right? 20 years ahead. What will you be doing 20 years? In 20 years, you will be running successful businesses. You will be working for good firms. You will be having a quality of vocation that you have chosen, where the reason you've done that is so that you can impact your lives and the lives of others. Now, to be in that position of impacting others, you need networks. Right. So if you're a business, you need funding. If you're a kind of an influencer, you need clients. If you are a person who has chosen a vocation to serve people, you need the means to go and reach out to as many people as possible. Now, where do those means come from? Where do those networks come from? Where does that funding? All of that comes at the strength of the networks that you have built along your way, starting right now. The very people you're talking to right now, the ones you're engaging with, will be your assets in the future. Now, just imagine this situation. Now, if you end up as an anti-them right now, can you connect with this resource 30 years from now? Not really, right? You've burnt those bridges. Now, here's where I want to go back to the gospel. You look at Jesus. Jesus was making connections with all these people. Right about when he was 12 years, he was engaging with the Pharisees, right? And then as he goes by, he engages with different kinds of people at different levels. But except for a couple of times where he really is harsh on people on their actions, not on them, on their actions, right? He's basically connecting and building these networks towards the end, right? So come back. So what do we do here? So there you can say, I have a personal stance regarding this. I know that you have reasons for why you are this or why you have this stance. I have my personal belief, and these are my reasons. However, that's a good discussion, right? That doesn't say anything about who I am as a person, who you are as a person. You're my friend. We're still friends. We still have these views. Now, when we do that, what happens is you're saying you have a stance, which means you're a person of values. And you live by those values. You're not going to compromise those values. However, you're saying, I still admire you as a friend. I want to keep this connection. We may have different viewpoints, but we're good. We're connected by humanity. So what happens there is, fast forward 20 years down the line, when they look at you, they know you as a person of values, this person who's capable. And those are the things you've got to look at when you look at a person you want to partner with, network with. So you can have both of these out there. So your personal stance. So when it comes to a personal choice, for example, with anything that is violating the Christian or Catholic values, you say absolutely no. I will not do that because it's against my values. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to distance myself from you.
Right.
We are still great friends. So that's I think that's kind of the approach we need to be taking here.
Yeah, Dony, just tracking it back a little bit when you first said, let's think about the future. Let's look 20 years down the line. And I got to be honest, like now and especially like back in post-secondary life in college, university, if someone told me to look ahead 20 years, I wouldn't even be able to look 5 months ahead. It's so difficult and there's so much going on, and it's so easy to fall into that pitfall of just looking at what's directly ahead of you. But it is so important to look at the long game and take those things in, because I think something that is a very big theme, especially for young people, is one of identity and one of finding out where I fit in and where I don't fit in. And if I'm not this, if I don't believe this, then okay, I'm going to say no to you and no to you and no to you. But it's important to emphasize the importance of keeping those networks open, keeping those relationships open, because you might be that only person that they see who has a possibility of bringing them to Christ. And what do you say about those pitfalls of not just saying no to people and saying no to relationships, but also of trying too hard to fit into people who we think that, oh, we should follow these streams because they're, you know, more trendy, or they're what the world is feeling right now. So I'm going to fit into these streams because that's what the world wants.
All right. So, the best example about fitting in trendy, you know, there's always this pressure to be cool, to do what the coolest people on campus are doing. I'd always just say, you know, just go back and just Google fashion magazines from the last 20 years, and you'll see, oh my God, was in vogue. People did this, people had this hairstyle. But you ask the people during that time, they felt that was the coolest thing they did. So any cool fad, etc., is gonna pass away in a very short time. Fashion has a ticking clock. However, right, so the pressure to fit in is in the present, right? Now, what you need to understand is that whenever people are having a certain kind of a coolness or a fad of what they're doing, and they feel that those activities or those actions make them cool, beyond that, there is this person, right? That's what, you know, they basically want to belong to something. So even as much as you would say, I want to fit into that crowd wants to be understood and to be felt. So by connecting with them there, you don't have to have the same ideals. You don't have to do the same activities. By connecting them within a one-to-one level, you can actually not go be a part of that group. You can get that group to be with you. Now, that's where you don't have the pressure to fit in, but you're still there. You're there. And one of the things I always believe that, you know, people, as much as people they want to do cool stuff or being cool, etc., they're looking for people who they can look up to, even among your peers, right? So if you come across as a person who's a person that they can look up to, either it can be with knowledge, it can be with your active participation in their lives, it can be a listening ear, it can be somebody who's a little bit more mature, who sees things from a slightly different perspective that's going to help them, they're going to look up to it. They may not admit it, right? But they look up and they'll actually be there. So the pressure, I wouldn't say that you will not feel this pressure. You will definitely feel this pressure when you go into university, when you see these groups. I want to be in that group. I want to be there. But remember, that group is also looking for something. They are looking to connect. And you need to go there and you need to connect. And once you do that connection by being great, by being amazing at what you are, automatically you build that network there. So that's there. And I believe one of the things that the ministry should be doing, that the Jesus Youth should be doing, is creating these small little pockets where people can be themselves, so that they can get the energy, the strength to go out into the other groups and belong there. So this is like this buffer system, right? So when you go there and you feel some kind of pressure there, you can come back to this group that's going to charge you up and say, you know what, that's good, that's great, go back. You're gonna move in there, and you're gonna be part of that, and that's gonna create that whole environment, right? So that's probably what we should be doing.
Right. And so I guess when you think about that, again, the practicals of that, you know, growing in relationship and being with people and having those conversations when it comes to evangelization, what are some of the main elements you think in terms of really being authentic, right? Being authentic as Catholics, as even just people, as friends to other people, so that they will, God willing, have a Christ encounter through us when they meet us.
Yeah. See, it shows, right? It shows with something very simple. I'll give you one example, right, of the way you conduct yourself in your speech. Right now, a lot of times, especially in the Western culture here today, or very much down in Australia, right? Every third word is a very interesting study in, you know, how you can be creative. However, what you need to know there is by making sure that you have just something as simple as clean speech, right, and sticking to that will make people notice and say, hey, why is he not using swear words, right? What is the purpose behind that? So those simple ways in which the way you conduct yourself, right? Your speech, your thinking, right? So you've got people thinking about something, and it can be negative, it can be deviant, and there, instead of criticizing them or jumping at them saying that's bad, you offer them a positive viewpoint, something that they don't see otherwise. And so eventually they start noticing, hey, you know what? There's something different about this person. I don't not like him. I like him, but I'm questioning the way I am doing things now. You
Mhm.
get me?
Yeah.
Right? So you're still having that connection. You're not converting them, right? But you're building that relationship that they can be who they are by letting you be who you are.
Mhm. That's beautiful. I think
Yep.
just carrying on that thread of connecting and reaching out. I think it's important to realize that not everyone is reached out to the exact same way, and in the same way that we as Catholics are different. I'm very different from Dylan, who's very different from me. I'm sure we have a lot in common with you, Donnie, but I'm sure we're also very different in many ways. And in the same way, the world is also different, and people are different. The way we reach out to them is different. And so, what are the ways in which what are the ways in which people are different that are easier to understand and easier for us to digest? Before we actually continue and get to the answer, I just want to say, if anybody in the audience has any questions that they want to share or shout out, feel free to comment them below, and we'll get moving. But yeah, continuing back to that question, Donnie.
Yes, Fred. Yeah, one of the mistakes sometimes we do is we have a one size fits all approach. We think that everybody, so we are the chosen people. We got the message, and nobody else got the memo, right? So we need to dim this as soon as possible. Go out there and do that. And a lot of people in the past have made these big mistakes of going and doing this. However, what we need to say, if you look at that, I always am a proponent of looking at the big picture. Look at the world. We're 7.6 billion people, right? And counting. And that means there's a lot of a lot of people at different stages. And not everybody is Catholic. Not everybody knows Jesus Christ, knows Christ or is Christian. So what do we understand this, right? So for the practical purposes of this group, I believe the young adults in Canada who are JYSNL mostly, what if you break down, I see 4 categories. One category is, the first category would be Catholics who are with you, who come to your church, who are going there, but who are not really interested in the faith, right? They just like, this is a matter of going to church on Sundays. Oh my God, I hate catechism. I hate these camps, but I'll just do the motions, and I'm standing out, outstanding Christian, right? So you got that bunch of people. So that's the first category. The second category is probably a little bit of a larger audience, where people who are born Christian or who have a Christian name, but nothing else to do about Christ. Over the time, they just lost connection with the faith, and they don't believe that the faith matters anymore. They believe everything's equal, and this is kind of like an old, outdated, a century-old religion, a myth that carried on as a story, and they're not really interested in anything to do with any faith as far. This is something.
I love people. I love everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I love everybody. Everybody's equal. Everybody, the world's fine. And make peace, man. My way, your way, we're not. That kind of group, right? And then you have the third group of people who have been antagonized or hurt by the church, either personally or people that they know. And these are people who have something very, very much to say against the church. And this can be because of the policies of the church. It can be because of personal actions of people within the church, or it can be actions in the community or something that happened to them that they are visibly hurt in the church. And then you have a large section of society who have not heard about Christ, who have no clue what Christ is, who were brought up in a world where they've not heard about what Christ is. So it's a foreign entity altogether. So you've got these sections of people, and how you minister Christ to each of these groups is entirely different. And this is sometimes the mistake we make, where we try to give the same approach to all of these people. So the first group, I would say, is a group, like I said, so they know the faith. They've been through church for the last 12, 13 years, and they know the stories of the gospel. They know Christmas. They know everything, but they can't connect. And they can't connect because they're not feeling belonged. They don't feel that they are part of something. And that's where we need to give them that personal connection. So there you need to reach out to them and be with them, engage with them, make it feel like a place where they can be something and not for religion. They can be there for who they are. Remember, this is a time, especially among that group, when you've basically cut out your parents, right? Your parents don't matter in your life. They don't. You've basically cut out any kind of formal influence, so teachers or advisors, etc. They're outside, right? And you are living in sort of a bubble where you're not even able to understand who you are, because your peers are dictating different ideas of who you should be. Right? So it's at that point of time where you need to know yourself, and that's where you want somebody who can be with you, who you can be free to yourself. So you have to create that environment. So that's evangelization there, trying to get to people and making them comfortable and relating to them, right? So that's how you give the message there. The second group of people who are born Christian, but after that, nothing to do, they need a two-pronged approach. They need this connection, right? They need this connection, but they also need information. They also need to know what's happening. They need to know how the church is manifest. It's beautiful. So there is some information that you need to give to them. There's also this connection that you need to give to them. And third, they're also doing so they're living in a world. So one of the statistics that I really like is over the last 2-3 years, we have seen an uptake in the number of volunteers from all time. Across history, from when we've been tracking how people have been volunteering to help others, the last 5-6 years have been the highest in all these years of people volunteering. What does it mean? It means that people, and most of these people are young people, they want to go out and help others, serve others, right? So there is this connection to do. So, and the Catholic Church has been doing this for so many, many years, right? Without any fame, without any, publicity. So by getting people to understand that nature of the church, you're connecting with these people. So information, the one-to-one connections, and then this state of doing, of feeling that they're contributing to society. The people who are being hurt by the church. Now, this is a long process of healing. Now, here you go and tell them, you know what, I know your story, and there is this story of this person who had a similar thing and how they overcame that. They're going to say, get lost, get out of my house, right? You can't connect with them without feeling, without empathizing through what they went through. And this is a process that takes years, maybe. And I feel sometimes even a lifetime. But are we ready to go and be with these people, to empathize with them? Now, they may not forgive the church. They may not forgive the people who there, because it depends on the personal grief and personal hurt, but they will begin to understand that there is somebody who cares about them. And that person is you, and you're doing that because you love Christ and you love this person. So that's a lifetime of a journey. Now, the last group of people who haven't heard about Christ, you need to have a multi-pronged approach. You need to have most people today are connected digitally, but most of your networks are controlled by algorithms that are filtered by more than relevance or truth, by interest. So you can't just get the message by posting a Facebook post and say, you know what, hey, believe now, or this is Christ, or this is wonderful. No, you need to have a digital strategy that involves algorithms again, probably apps, but most importantly, you need to make the Catholic come back visible. So you'll need to have information, you'll need to have connection, you'll need to have social entrepreneurship. You need to really connect with the world. If you look at how the Catholic Church has contributed to society, you've seen the contribution in the field of education, in the field of healthcare, in the field of social justice. Now, this was at a time when the world wasn't thinking about these things, and the Catholic Church was saying this has to be universally available for every human being. Right? This is every person's right to have. And that's how the church gave today what we know as formal education to the world. So but now we've come a long way from there. We have a lot of capitalist approaches. A lot of people are capitalizing on these. You've got a lot of good initiatives from social entrepreneurs. But I think it's time for Catholics to make a comeback. Now, remember, I told you in the beginning, you have a 40-year, 20-year forward looking. This is what you would be doing. Right? So when you are 20 years down the line, you will be involving yourself in these social entrepreneurship projects that's impacting the world in such a way that people who haven't heard about Christ are feeling the goodness of who Christ is. Now, remember, I like this message of what Jesus did, right? So he didn't go to only the people who liked him or followed him, right? Those were the core apostles, and then there were his disciples who used to come and hang on his every word. But then he also gave food for those 5,000 people who just came to listen. Right? I'm sure most of them had that bread and fish and said, that's tasty stuff, man. This guy preach every week, right? There are a lot of people who did that, right? But they felt happy in that moment. They felt, and Jesus felt that before they felt it. He said, they must be hungry. Give them something to eat, right? And they were filled, and they went back and they slept comfortably. We need to do a lot of that for a lot of people in the world, right? Eventually, when they start seeing these patterns, oh, you know what? There's a lot of these things that I've been getting, this information is here, they'll start to see that there is something beautiful, that the message of the gospel starts becoming alive within society from different areas. So that's probably, I would say, a quick breakdown on what is, how we need to move in and give and share the love of Christ in today's world.
Beauty. Thank you so much, Dony Peter. That was I feel like we're just scratching the surface, but at the same time, I feel like you've laid a very good groundwork, I think, for a lot of these things. And I think it's very relevant, especially for a lot of our audience who are maybe very passionate about evangelization and about living and spreading Christ, but really don't have those exact tools. And so maybe this is something we need to talk a lot more about. It can't just be a one-time conversation.
This is the framework. I said just a framework, but we need to go deeper. Yeah. But
beautiful.
Yeah.
So maybe coming back to the audience, we have some questions I think that we have for you now from our audience. And so we'll start with the first question. I don't know who this is from. I think this is an anonymous question, but the question is, what are some tools we can use to help build us up as agents of evangelization with a better understanding of people as well as a knowledge-based approach?
All right. Okay. Knowledge-based approach. Yes. So one of the tools, like I said, so again, I'm repeating myself, but the first aspect is the transformation within yourself, right? So this is the toughest part of evangelization, right? Is to change yourself to believe the gospel and to be converted by the gospel. Without that conversion experience, like I said, you're just empty gongs. So that's the first part, right? So how do you do that? You focus on the pillars, right? Come back to, being strong, a man or woman of faith, and adhering to those values. And one of the things that we really need to do, and this is what the saints used to do, is they looked at areas in their lives and they said, you know what? I love Christ, but I'm still following this area of sin and I'm still doing the same thing. And they used to mark that thing and say, you know what? How do I get rid of this problem first? And they say, I'll give myself a timeline. Over the next 6 months, I'm going to challenge and to rectify this behavior. And each of those behaviors, and slowly what happens is, those problem things and they're slowly going away, right? So that's the personal transformation. The second part is today we're living in a world where people have access to information, and when I say information, it's any information, right? So people don't have basically what is called as a source of truth. And so what happens is, and because they go for what is the easiest, right? People always go for the low-hanging fruit, right? What's easiest available, and that's stuff that's pushed to them. So one thing is you need to have the right access to information. So I would say build yourself in knowing about your faith, right? And also knowing about other people and how other people's faith systems work and how they are and why they believe what they believe. So without that, if you go and approach, you might end up antagonizing people. You might end up hurting them even, right? So getting that basic understanding would help you relate better. Right, so that's the second part of it, and once you get that understanding of what your faith is, right, the third is you need to also understand how people love. So I think it's Father Robert Spitzer, is a Jesuit priest, an amazing thinker. He talks about these three levels at which people operate. So you've got people who are dominantly analysts, right, who need data, who need information, right, and then you have people who are basically activists, who get a lot of pleasure in doing stuff, and then you have people who are predominantly affectives, who are working with the heart, or they go with feeling. So each of these category of people need information delivered to them that corresponds to that style. So for a person who is an analyst, if you go and tell them a heartwarming story about something that happened, they're like, you know what, yeah, that's a good story, but give me the facts, right? Or they'll say, in that story, there is this loophole because this person didn't do this thing. They're analyzing your story as you speak, right? So what happens is when you go and evangelize, you'll miss that if you're going to an analyst and missing out that part. So that's the first thing, right? So a person who is an analyst, you need to start looking at information, data that corresponds to how they can analyze that information, make sense out of it. For a person who is an activist, you need to go and give that person something to do. He needs to, or she needs to be doing something practically to feel that experience. So outreaches, social programs, they will feel. The third is a group of people who are feeling. And if they're not given an environment where they can feel or experience the message of the gospel through an experiential feeling level, they will not connect with it. So these are three basic levels, and people can have varying degrees of each, by the way. They can be dominant, and they can be subdominant, and they can be recessive of each of these things. So one of the things is the understanding of how people are and how people operate, or what are their predominant styles, and that would make it easier for you to reach out. I know when you said tools, you were thinking I was going to suggest an app, but this is probably a little bit more of homework, but that's how you do this. So coming back, recapping, one is being a person of values that is transformed by yourself is the first tool. That speaks volumes, right? The second is knowing about it in a bit more detail. And I'm not talking about being apologists. No, you don't have to have high-level intellectual understanding. No, but you need to have a basic understanding of what it is. Right? And also, and third, an understanding of human nature. And so these are the ways in which you can start skimming the surface and start getting there. I hope I might have answered your question, that question probably.
That was beautiful. Another question here, and I think this would be more of a good summary type question. The question is, are we always called to evangelize with the word of God to everyone? And I think you might have touched on that, because it's not always with the word of God is not always the truth. And what you said about those three aspects from Father Robert Spitzer, it kind of reminds me of the three aspects that we kind of refer to now as truth, beauty, and goodness, almost in a way, where there's the people that relate to the church in the eyes of truth. There's people that relate to the church through the eyes of beauty, in the cathedrals and in the halls and the pillars and in the artwork and in the music. And then there's people who relate to the church through the eye of goodness, in doing good works and in doing good deeds. And I think that's beautiful. And so I guess this would be more of a summary question, but in terms of evangelizing to everyone and reaching out to the world, and in terms of being a part of the Catholic comeback, what would be like the one takeaway message that you would have, or a takeaway message that you have as we get close to wrapping up?
Yeah, see, like I mentioned at the beginning, the message is the end game, right? Remember, the church has been here for 2,000 years, and that's not because somebody felt that the church is going to transform. No, it was because they listened to the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit was the strategist who said, you know what, the church has to open up these areas here. You need to do this now. You need to do this now. You need to do this now. And each of those people, they used their faculties, the intelligence that God gave them, to utilize the strategy, to make the strategy active. And if you look at how the church grew, the church initially started by, like I said, caring and living the values of the gospel. One of the first things that the apostles did was go out and reach out to the people who did not have. They took care of the needy, the poor, the widows. Right? They started out by practicing that. They went out and started the healing ministry. And then they started the teaching ministry. And then they started evangelizing different levels of people. If you look at how Paul evangelizes, he speaks to the common people. He speaks to the people in authority. He also speaks to those people who are able to influence society. Right? He even goes to the king and presents a defense of the faith to King Agrippa. What does he do? He's basically looking at every level at which you can evangelize. And then what is he doing? He's also building these networks in these places that he goes to, right? And he's building up leaders of faith who can continue that work. So he's continuing the strategy. So what you guys, if think about one thing that's going to be a takeaway from here, remember the big picture. 30, 40 years down the line, what are you doing that's going to impact and change our world? And look at the world today and say, what needs to be changed today in the world? What is an area where I feel with the love of Christ can transform? And then look at yourself. How can I, in the next 25 years, build a solution to solve that problem? As you go by this, and as you go through your journey of life, share this approach with the people you meet, with the small group, with the networks that you share. Remember, the problem that you're solving is not a problem that is a religious problem. It's a problem that people are feeling, that people are missing. And as you're solving this problem with all of your networks, you're sharing the reason why you're doing it. And that is because you love people, you love your neighbor, you love God. And as these networks grow, your message gets passed on to all these people. So your dream has 1,000 ways of living. And the end game, 40 years down the line, you have a solution and you're actually solving this problem right now that you're thinking. So I'd say, look outside and see where you can go and give the gospel, where the transformative power of God's love can change something, even though it doesn't seem like it can happen right now. I would say, look at politics, for example. You see politics and you say, that's an area where I need God's love. Say, okay, so if I want to transform politics, what can I do today? How can I build leaders over the next 20 years who can come up to that power of influencing public policy that will change their lives? If you start thinking about that, you'll start going and talking about people, about building value-based leaders. You talk about revamping the education system. You'll talk about identifying leaders and giving them these great, amazing stories, amazing experiences, amazing opportunities where they... Are you seeing any area? And the more we see that, you have the end result 20, 30 years. So remember, it's not today, it's not tomorrow that the end of the world is not tomorrow, right? We're not thinking about that. By the way, I don't know. But we need to have this big picture. We need to have this big picture. I'm sure when Jesus said, go out and reach the ends of the world, he saw the big picture. When Paul said, I'm going to go out and spread the gospel, he saw that end picture. And he did go out quite a bit, right? Each of those congregations that began, right? Each of those founders of this congregation, they saw the big picture, right? But what they did was they looked at that big problem and they said, what can I do today to start working on that? And they did those small things. They got this small band of friends. They started moving there. And slowly, and today, as you look at it, the world's impacted beyond what each of those people individually could have imagined. Right. That's the end game.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. On behalf of myself, Fred, the whole SNL team, and all the audience, thank you so much again, Dr. Dony Peter. We appreciate your presence with us, taking your time to prepare this. Thank you so much. We ask everyone for your prayers for Dony, for his family, for the ministry in Australia, and everything. Thank you so much. Just a quick, couple of quick announcements before we end off for the night.
As always, this is a live recording. After this, you will not be able to watch this recording until next week. However, you will be able to watch last week's recording with the only Joe Zambone that's coming out tomorrow. Next week's live stream, don't forget to catch it. It's going to be with the one, the only Father Stan Fortuna. Yeah, that's right. Stan Fortuna. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, him. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel. As we see right now, only 46% of you are subscribed. Make sure to like this video. Let's get this video to 1,000 likes. Let's make that happen, guys. Let's make it happen. As always, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for tomorrow, and we'll catch you guys next week. We didn't get canceled.
So much. We made it canceled. We made it all the way through.
Yes.
God bless, guys.
All right,
Good
peace.
night.
See ya.
Bye.
Oh, dude.
In the spirit, we fall on our knees, and our whole life we lay at your feet. In the spirit, we fall on our knees, and like David, we rise up and dance before you.
Take off your burdens, take off your sorrows, put on your dancing shoes. Let me hear you. Take off your fears and take off your pain. Put on your robes of righteousness. Prove it, prove it, prove it.